Welcome. In this lesson, we will be looking at the if and else statements in Python. In part 1, we mentioned that Python executes the code line by line. However, there are ways to break this sequence. You could make it jump some particular lines, or you could actually make it to go back to other lines that it has executed before, or make a loop. But we will see all that in coming lessons. What you do what you do now is that the if statement works in conjunction with comparison operators. So comparison means greater than, less than, equal to, not equal to, or less than or equal to, things like that. And then also with logic operators. Logical operators are the and, or, not, and things like that, that will evaluate either true or false. So depending on whether it is true or whether it is false, the code will execute. So, but it's just like what we do day to day. So probably in the morning, you wake up, you want to go to work, and then you look, is it raining? If it's raining, then you say, okay, I need an umbrella, for example. So that condition is if it is raining, then you take an umbrella. So that's a condition. Then, or if you say, if it is raining and it is cold, then I also need a jacket, for example. So here you have two conditions with some logical explanations, with some logical reductions to let you determine how to proceed. So it's the same principle we are going to be using here. So we'll just write a little code and then we'll proceed from there. So I'm going to just comment out everything we have here and slash. So let's have a little code that we'll use. So for example, let's say x is equal to 5. If you go to the blog, you'll see some of these exercises there already. So x is equal to 5. So the condition we are going to have now, let's use a comparison condition. So if x is greater than, so this is the sign for greater than 0, colon. So it's very important to add the colon there. Without it, you'll get error messages. So if you press enter, you see it has indented. There's an indent here. So PyCharm does that for you automatically. Wing 0101, Wing 101, and some other might not do that for you. So you have to do it manually. So you have to leave maybe 3 spaces or 4 spaces after the if, the same after the else as well. So this tells Python that this particular line you're about to write is part of this if statement, or the lines that follow will all be part of this if statement. So what we'll say here is that print. So I'll just print x is positive. So what I'm saying is that we have a variable here, x. The value it has at the moment is 5. So what I'm asking Python to do is that if the value of this x, of this variable, is greater than 0, then you should print x is positive. So let's go out of this if statement. So let's go out. So I will say else. So if I press enter, it will also give me another indent. So I'll just say print, and I will say x is negative. In some old programs, you talk about else or then, and so, but in Python, this is how it works. So what I'm saying is that my variable x has a value 5. If it is greater than 0, if that variable, then Python should print x is positive. But else, if it should print x is negative. So if it is not greater than 0, then print x is negative. So, but you don't need to write all that. Just these few lines will do. If it is this, do this. If not, else, do this. So let's see what happens when we run the program. If you run it now, so you see what it has printed here, x is positive because our x is greater than 0. If we change this and let's put a minus, So we have -5 now. And if you run this, what happens? So x is negative. So when we run the program the first time, it executed this first part, the if part of the code, and the else part of the code was not executed. And when we run it this second time with a negative number, the if part of the code was not executed, but the else part of the code is executed. So that is how you have our if and else statement. So what happens is that when we run it the first time, it looked at the code and said, if x is greater than 0, is x greater than 0? That is true. So it evaluated a Boolean true. Because it's true, it printed x is positive. But x, the next time we run it with x -5, it says if x is greater than 0, is x greater than 0? That is false. So the Boolean expression is false. Because it's false, it now went to the next item, which is else, and then printed x is negative. So that's how if and else statements work. We could improve this code, probably instead of just writing this by ourselves every time, we can just take input from the user. Remember how to do this? So let's say we take integer input, int. If you remember how we take input, then maybe we'll say, please enter a number, the space, and then that's it. So it will prompt the user to enter. So if you run it now, it will prompt us to enter our, so please enter a number. So let's say 9, sorry, I should enter in here, 9. So 9 is positive. Let's run it again. Please enter a number. Let's say -1. If you run it again, enter, x is negative. So it works. So you can take input from the user and provide whether it is a positive number or a negative number. That's how our code works. So next, let me introduce something called the elif. Elif. Elif means else if. So here we have only two conditions. If it is greater than 0, do this. If not, do this other value. What if you have more than one condition? So let's say I want to add 0. What if our x is a 0? So you could have this elif statement. Elif means else if. So you can have as many elif as possible, as required in your program. So elif, so we could say elif x equal 0. So you see the double equal sign is the equal. What equal sign is? A single equal sign means assignment, but double equal sign means actually x is actually equal to 0. Then if elif x is equal to 0, you indent it again, print x is 0. All right. So let's run the code again and see what happens. So please enter a number. So let's enter 0 and see what it gives us. X is 0. So the if part of the code was not executed. The else part of the code was not executed. Just the elif part was executed. So when it checked, the if part was false. So it skipped that part and then came to the elif part. The elif part was true. Then it now executed that. So there was no need to execute the else part. So if we run it again, let's say we put a -1 or -2. -2. So it tells us that x is negative because the if part here was false because when it tested the condition, it was false. So then it tested the elif, it was false as well. Then the else was correct. So that's why it printed x is negative. So we could do so many other things with this. We can change it. We could make this maybe less than. So there's many operators you can use. Less than, greater than or equal to. I think that's how it's written. Or equal to, greater than, equal to, equal, and the rest. So these are all options that are open to you to use. You could also use you could use one of the logical statements as well. So we want to know if x is greater than 0, for example, or x is equal to 0, then execute a particular. So we will say here, if x is greater than 0 or x equal to 0. So we have combined these values here. So I can just maybe comment this out for now. So what I'm saying is that, so you have a logical operator here, or. So if x is greater than 0 or x equal to 0, print x is positive. So we have a logical or, and you could have an and for logic. You can have a not, and depending on what code you're writing. So let's run this now and see. So if you enter a 0 and press enter, so x is positive because the condition here says if x is greater than 0 or x is equal to 0. So if you had entered, let's say a 2, it still tells us that x is positive because the condition has been met. X is greater than 0 or x equal to 0. So other logical operators you can use include and, not, and the rest. So you could try on your own, maybe doing different codes and with different combinations of the comparison operators, the greater than, less than, equal to, less than or equal to, less than or equal to, and then using the logical operators as well, the and, the or, the not, for example, and see what happens. So, but the most important thing to realize is that when you type the if statement, after the if statement, the whole line for the if, there has to be a colon here. And then the next line, what you're going to execute under the if has to be indented. So the indent here, if you're using PyCharm, it does that automatically for you. But if you're using another IDE that doesn't do that, you have to do it yourself. So you either leave maybe 3 or 4 spaces. But you have to be consistent. If you leave 3 spaces here, then under the else, you have to leave 3 spaces as well. If you leave 4, then you leave 4 under the else as well. So this is, I think we can stop here for now. We'll do more examples and more exercises. But in the meantime, you can try on your own to do some of these exercises by yourself, just changing some of these values. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try to answer them for you. Thank you very much.